Welcome to Writers Not Writing. This used to be a show where I interviewed authors about the ways they procrastinated, and I'm sure we'll still have some of that. But in these times, I want to use this show to highlight artists who are using their voices to push back against fascism. Whether we're writing or not writing, we need to be defending one another. I'm Benjamin Gorman, your friendly author in exile, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer, who hitched a ride in my suitcase. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff, and Doug does his best to make me sound better. Welcome to Writers Not Writing. You're going to enjoy today's show. And if you want a little more, become a patron of my Patreon, help me keep a roof over my head, and you'll get access to an ad-free version of the show with a bonus segment with each interviewee. Okay, here we go. If I take my time. Okay. Hail and well met, readers and reviewers. I am very excited about today's show. Today I have James Bowe. James Bowe is the author of 6 novels, ranging from the YA fantasy The Unwritten Girl, Fathom 5, and The Young City, to the award-winning YA sci-fi novel Icarus Down. He has recently released a YA sci-fi novel set on Mercury entitled The Sunrunners, and a companion anthology featuring 10 other authors entitled Tales from the Silence. His new adult urban fantasy, The Night Girl, is due to be reissued by Shadow Pond Press in August of this year. By day, James is a freelance writer and communications officer living near Toronto, Ontario, with his fellow author wife Erin and their 2 kids, Wayfinder and Eleanor. Welcome, James. Very glad to have you here today.
Glad to be here too. Thank you.
So,
I'm going to give it a second because my dog walked in.
yes, that's the way it goes. Yes, my dogs may be making an appearance as well. We'll see.
Yeah, we have a lot of dogs here, I hear.
Yes. I've got 3, and one is super chill. The large one is very calm. He will not be the problem. And then the puppies, who are not really puppies, but still have decided to behave like puppies, so we think of them as the puppies, and they may run around and bark and
We have a
stuff.
golden
We'll
doodle
hope not.
called Luna, and we have 2 cats. Black one you'll see, we call him Cygnus, and the other one you might see or might not. If you were visiting here, you would not, though.
Yeah, right. Yep, I had a
Yeah,
cat like that once. Does Cygnus like to participate in your writing sessions?
so yeah, more than is more than is welcome, frankly, but
Mhm. Yes, and I appreciate that. They want to be involved. They want to help. Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, we are kind of shifting the show to be recognizing, be cognizant and sensitive to the reality in which we all live, kind of globally now. And as far as the rise of right-wing fascism, this is something that all authors, all people of conscience are dealing with. So, what have you been thinking about and doing to push back?
well, I mean, I think unfortunately, uh, well, the answer is not nearly enough. Um, I mean, yeah, I've been sort of exploring this myself with, I mean, Tales of the Salads. The idea is of that is the Earth has gone solid due to environmental collapse. We are seeing what's happening on the colonies in the inner solar system as they deal with the sudden loss of the big political player. But we also see what's happening on Earth in its new dark age, and they are slipping into a very authoritarian uh, beat, unfortunately. And so, I mean, so that's been one way I've been processing it.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, it's everywhere on social media. If you look and you tend to end up doom scrolling. Um, what I've tried to do is just to try and stay informed and challenge misinformation whenever I see it. And I mean, if we and to go deeper, I mean, we have a nice house here in Canada, which right now is outside the United States.
Well, yes, and this is one of the things that I wanted to get to. I'm very glad to have you on and get to talk to you about
Yeah.
it. I've been reading
Right.
about kind of the Canadian perspective. This is very scary rhetoric, and the question is always with our the regime in the United States, how seriously do you take the rhetoric? And if you took the rhetoric at face value, it's existential. Like this is a very, very serious threat. On the other hand, is it bluster and distraction? Well, how safe can you feel going, we'll dismiss it as bluster and distraction when the rhetoric is very dangerous? So tell everybody about how you and your community, people around you, are interpreting what you're hearing.
Well, I mean, in many ways, this is one thing that's made me feel a bit better because um, Trump, in going for the whole 51st state thing, poked a hornet's nest.
Hmm.
The Canadian public, my wife has said she's from Nebraska and she immigrated to Canada when we got married. And and she said it's like Canadians define themselves quite a lot about by being not American. Frankly, we
Yeah.
do it too often than is healthy. But when he made that claim, you've never seen any group of people unite faster.
Yeah.
Things were not looking good politically before that. We have Justin Trudeau, who was a constant target of these right wing trolls that I think he threatened their manhood, frankly.
Mm.
And on the opposition side, I mean, we have a couple of progressive parties, but the big opposition is the Conservative Party, which was being led by Pierre Poilievre, probably mispronouncing the name, unfortunately, but he was definitely taking on the Trump approach of, division, Canada is broken, only I can fix it, and, cozying up to Proud Boys type of thing. Uh, and he had at the time, in January, like a 20 to 25 point lead with
Wow.
Trudeau's party, the Liberals, slipping into third place behind the NDP at below 20. The Liberals are now leading.
Yeah.
Yeah, just suddenly, yeah, I mean, people are like, how do you lose a 30-point lead? Well, this is how.
Yeah.
Uh, he has, people have no confidence that he can stand up to Trump. And Trudeau has resigned. We have a new liberal leader who will likely, I mean, we don't know for sure, but he will likely call an election early within the next few weeks. And if the polls hold true, we will have another liberal majority government. And I, for one, I don't have, I'm not on Twitter. I pulled my activity off of Twitter, including the organization that I worked for at the time. I said, we have no credibility if we stay posting here. We got to go. But I've kept the accounts to keep them, prevent cyber squatting. But I'm sorely tempted that if this happens, I'll make one more post and says, "Thank you, Elon Musk and Trump, for making this possible."
Right, right. Well, I mean, I think this is another instance, another illustration of the fact that anyone who cozies up to Trump, he will betray them and ruin their careers.
Oh
Like
yeah,
this will never go well for any of these folks in the long run. And
absolutely.
the conservative PM or leader who was hoping to be PM is now finding out. Oh yeah, Trump's not going to time his rhetoric to benefit you. He's totally willing to throw you under the bus and absolutely destroy your political career, because it's not he doesn't think in that kind of systemic way. He's just he's your old uncle on the porch just ranting,
Yeah,
and the strategy certainly did not benefit the Conservative Party in Canada.
yeah.
Tell folks
There
about
is,
put more about the reaction. I've heard the boycotting has extended beyond just the kind of very online folks to, the general public is saying we are not buying American products.
Yeah, well, there are a few things I think that took on a considerable took on a great symbology for the people. I mean, the fact that this happened to happen during that Four Nations hockey series, all of a sudden that game, which would have been just something we would have said, "Oh yeah, nice," took on sort of major political significance, like the miracle on ice. Frankly, that was frankly amazing. But yeah, the we've been passing around lists about what is American and what is Canadian, and in terms of the stores and stuff, where should we shop? It is complicated. I learned, for instance, that Coca-Cola Canada, while it's a company invented in the United States, a product invented in the United States, Coca-Cola Canada is not owned by Coca-Cola America. It's owned by the guy who owns the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Interesting. So it's
You
completely
know,
separate, right?
yeah, and it's bottled here. I mean, we pay a license for the name and maybe the recipe, but it's all here. So, I mean, how does it work boycotting that? Uh, McDonald's has, I mean, it's an international corporation, and McDonald's Canada is slightly separate from that. But next door to that is A&W, which is a burger joint. It pays a license to the A&W Root Beer Company, but it is now like definitely a Canadian company because the American restaurants that it used to be paired with have gone away.
Yeah.
So people are like, "Oh, well, I'm going to try A&W instead." Um, but yeah, in stores, the stores know where their bread's buttered. They're starting to put Canadian flags where I'll buy the products in order to show, which products you should own. And I mean, this isn't the first time we've done this. There was the whole ketchup kerfuffle where Heinz
Right.
ketchup pulled out of Canada and French is like, well, we'll buy the tomatoes from Leamington, Ontario, and suddenly it became the big pro-Canadian brand, and they benefited. But yeah, there is a tremendous amount of energy, positive energy that people are really sort of taking this on, and that being in the middle of that, I think it gives me a lot of hope, and it's a break from the doom scrolling.
Right. Well, and it's an action you can take,
Yeah,
and I think that one of
absolutely.
the things that struck me when I was deciding, okay, I need to leave the United States. This is no longer
Yeah,
a place that I want to contribute to in terms of my time and dollars. And so I was like, I need to hightail it. And, dear friends and family were saying, we understand what's going on. We'll see you in 4 years. And I would have to explain, like, this is not going to magically pass in 4 years, even presuming there are still elections in four
yeah,
years, which is not something you can necessarily assume anymore. But, things like purchasing habits,
yeah,
are not going to magically change. Once people say, you know what, this is now the product that I like, it is a Canadian brand, this is what is, they're not going to go, okay, now there's a different party in power in the United States, so we can now have our relationship magically resets. Like this is going to affect the United States and the rest of the world for a generation.
yeah,
And well, I'm making myself very much at home here in Europe. I'm not planning on going, oh, everything is now completely fine. The United States has dealt with its racism and misogyny and authoritarianism, and like this is going to take a while. And I bet
yeah,
people are starting to feel like, okay, this is an important inflection point in Canadian history in that way.
yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're not perfect here either. We have issues that we need to deal with, and of course, we had our own COVID convoy
Oh,
that definitely appealed to the Trump side of things. But yeah, the fact it did light a fire under us, and hopefully that keeps on going.
yeah.
Other things that I'm doing to try and stand up for fascism is like we stand ready here to offer asylum to people who need it. I mean, we haven't. My eldest Wayfinder has sort of they're definitely the stronger activist, and they've been in touch with they have friends in various uh, communities that I think are under threat here in the United States, and Aaron and I have both said it's like, hey, if they need some place to stay here, we have an extra bedroom.
And even the offer, even if
Yeah,
you're not, giving, is incredibly important to that person who's saying, okay, I can live my life day to day knowing I've got a place that I
yeah,
can go. That's one of the things that we've been offering is, hey, when the time comes, at least know you've got a place to come, even if it's not permanent, even if it's for a
yeah,
breather. Like, and people have been saying that actually helps me feel better on a day-to-day basis, knowing. So that is really important for folks to know. There are
yeah,
people out there who care and who will take you in if that should come to that.
absolutely. There's in the outline that we've written, I we've gone in a different, we've gone in a slightly different direction, but I think it is relevant in terms of. There's a quote that I come back to a lot, and it comes from my sort of history of, even though I've been a writer all my life, I didn't realize that I was going to wanted to actually be a writer until my mid 30s. I spent a long time trying to find a real job and train for a real job as an
Mhm.
urban planner. And which I guess is a world building in a completely different way with actual buildings. But I went through the School of Urban and Regional Planning at the University of Waterloo, and I'm realizing that there were some radical ideas in there. Because one of the things they made us do is read the book Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino. Have you read that?
No, but I have heard of the author. I've heard of the book, actually. I know the
Yeah.
author, but I should check it out.
It's a brilliant book. It's a series of conversations between Marco Polo and Kublai Khan, where Marco Polo describes all the cities that he's visited on his journey. And I mean, these cities are where there's a lot of metaphorical or weird things happening. And you come to realize what he's actually describing is the same city,
Mm.
just different parts of it. And different aspects of it. And but one of the things that comes out of this is, in the sense of the story, is all the cities are sort of gradually transforming into the same city. Just, you fly out of an airport and you can land, and there's no difference.
Yeah.
It's all Trudy, as it's said. But at the final part, Kublai Khan is like looking at these cities of the future, which are, the a dystopian future, and he's like, if this is inevitable, what do we do? And if the inferno is inevitable, what do we do? How do we fight this future? And the quote from Polo is, "The inferno of the living is not something that will be. If there is one, it is what is already here. The inferno that we live every day, that we form by being together. There are two ways to escape suffering it. The first is easy for many: accept the inferno and become such a part of it that you can no longer see it. The second is risky and demands constant vigilance and apprehension. Seek and learn to recognize who and what in the midst of inferno are not inferno, then make them endure. Give them space." And
Yeah.
I mean, they unleashed that on urban planners, student urban planners. We graduated and then we went smack into the wall of reality.
Yes, but I love this quote because that is
Yeah.
an incredibly important point. And this, I will confess, took a lot of learning and realization on my part. What is happening in the United States is not new. It is not, something novel. We are seeing a different and more public and more obvious manifestation of it in the same way, in the summer of George Floyd, we
Yeah.
realized what had been going on and simply wasn't being filmed, right?
Yeah. Oh,
This
yeah.
is all the stuff that was under the surface. It has always been there. And
Mhm.
now people like me belatedly are going, oh my gosh, this is intolerable. And one
Yeah.
of the things that I'm really wrestling with is, on the one hand, I want to say to kind of conservatives who are just now going, wait a second, this is unacceptable. Like, shame on you. You should have realized this sooner. And then I have to check myself and say, wait a
Yeah.
second, I realized this way late too. I need to give grace to the people who are recognizing this in their own time.
Yeah.
There's going to be a different tipping point for each person, but I think my hope is that a lot of people will recognize this is all we've always had these problems. Uh,
Yeah, I explored this a little in the Sunrunners and Tales from the Silence in something I called The Last Good Day. Um, I mean, it's a title of a part, and it comes up in the narrative of many of the stories is on her last good day, just the sense of, the day before the end of the world. And as I was writing this, I asked my fellow writers, take a swing at this. Because I mean, the whole assumption of there was one last good day, like November 4th, 2016, before Trump's election. You know, uh, if we are honest, that's a position of privilege to be able to say
right,
that. If we are
right,
honest with ourselves, the roots of what caused the next day stretch back weeks, months, years
right.
from there. We just didn't see it because we didn't have to see it until it was impossible to ignore. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, which is a hard thing to realize. I love this idea of the metaphor of the last good day. The last good day is the last day of denial, right?
yeah,
When you can say, I choose not to see this. And once you see it, the days before weren't great either. You just didn't
yeah,
choose to see that. I
absolutely.
love that.
Yeah.
Um, so all of this can be very overwhelming. I mean, it's exhausting. It's incredibly taxing to be thinking about all this. And it is healthy. And
Mhm.
I say this recognizing my own hypocrisy because I'm bad about this, but it is healthy to get away from it, to
Yeah.
stop the doom scrolling, to think about other things, to live a joyful, hopeful life so that there's a reason to make a better world, right? So, what have you been distracting yourself with that has been filling you back up lately?
Well, recently, I guess I've been doing a lot of rewatching with the family of Star Trek, especially Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. Um, I mean, that gives us a vision of the future that we want and we would want to fight for. Deep Space Nine gives us a moderated version of that, saying, well, we really need to actually fight for this type of thing. Um, and of course, Star Trek Lower Decks, which is a love letter to those series, featuring some really awesome stories and moments in their own right.
I have not
Um,
watched Lower Decks yet. I love Next Generation. I love Deep Space Nine. Watched every episode, and I need to check out Lower Decks. So,
you
how
really
does
do.
Lower Decks connect to those in
It's
terms of?
about it's about like a few years after the end of Deep Space Nine, and they do sort of keep the continuity going. I mean, spoilers. Mariner, the main character, who's the sort of the screw up, but actually has some issues that she needs to work out. I mean, fought during the Dominion War, really.
Okay.
Uh, it isn't immediately obvious because she has the same rank as this chipper and very exuberant Brad Boimler, but people are realizing it's like, given how much she's experienced, she's at least 10 years older
Mm.
and maybe like 50 years older in terms of cynicism. Uh, but yeah, and there are, I mean, there it presents itself as a comedy, but there is real character development in the story here, especially with Mariner. And by the end of the first season, no spoilers, that you will get a moment where you realize that Mariner is a lot deeper than you think she is,
Mm.
and that'll sort of shift your opinion of her. And then there is this crowning moment of awesome at the end of season 4, which I will not spoil for you. Um, I said I definitely think you should get involved and check it out.
Yeah, I will check that one out. That does sound really. Uh, I think that would be good for my soul right now.
Yeah. In terms of books, I've been reading and rereading The Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells.
I love them so much.
They are brilliant. It's an interesting take. I like the interesting take on sort of the whole personhood and people subtly and not so subtly fighting the influence of the corporation rim. Um, I love art. The and I mean, I tend to read him. Tend to read it. I have trouble saying it as pronoun,
Right.
with a bit of a Russian accent because that just sounds a bit more
Oh,
badass.
that's interesting. That is interesting. Yeah. Yes, folks who don't know this is a series about a robot who is incredibly complex. Like,
Oh yeah,
comes across as pretty straightforward and simple very early on, and then pretty early on in the series, we realize there's some mysterious, weird stuff going on with what has created the personality of this
yeah,
character. But it is funny and it is witty. It is, the character, it is, got this really interesting kind of remove from humanity. So it's able to go, oh, humans are so stupid and humans are so terrible in these ways and these ways and these ways. And also, come to a point where it cares about some of them and wants
yeah,
to protect them from, like you said, the corporate rim, kind of
yeah.
the corporations that are destroying the universe around them. And so, yeah, I really, really recommend that series as well. It's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
so I wanted to get your help. So we are doing a thing where we are doing a shared storytelling, a collaborative storytelling as a serial to keep bringing folks back. So welcome back everybody who was interested in the story of Zil Naroth. So this is a fantasy story about an 11-year-old girl who runs away from home. And
Mm,
she is on a side quest in this universe that I'm creating for another novel, but she is not a character in that novel. This is a side story for me to kind of explore the space. And in our previous last couple of weeks, uh, we got to know a little bit about Zill's background. Zill is living with a person in town because her father was conscripted into the
mm,
military, and so she was left in the care of somebody who we understand as adults was doing her best to take care of her, but from Zill's perspective, this person was very boring because
yeah.
dad was cool and taking her out to play in the woods and, learn to be a fighter like him. And this person is, been teaching Zill how to tan leather. Like, not, it's
Yeah.
boring work. And so then something goes really wrong in town. There's a kind of bully figure who gets into an altercation with the only remaining kind of town sheriff character. And when they get into a fight, kills him. And in public, this is in the market, this is posturing, you can't push me around, old man. And then the people of the town kind of accept this bully character as, well, I guess you really are in charge now, and Zill can't tolerate this. So Zill hops onto a market cart that is leaving, one of the people who are bringing goods in and out of town to sell to escape town. And last week we talked with Jesse Hennard and Marie Parks about who this person would be. So Zill sneaks into this cart, and at first she's trying to figure out who this, what kind of cart she's even in. And she's an 11-year-old, she's hungry. So
Mm,
she's looking for foodstuffs and finding that all the materials in the cart are not particularly edible. There's some berries, but they're, berries used to make ink. You wouldn't want to eat them.
mm,
There's, leather that's not yet made into anything. There's, textile kinds of products. But this is a person who brings the kind of raw materials back and forth rather than fun, cool stuff for an 11-year-old to explore. And then she does find the merchant's lunch. And when she bites into this old dried bread, it is much louder than she expects, makes a big crumb mess, and Zilla's discovered. And where we left off last week, the person who is neither male nor female, there are four genders in this world. She's
right.
she, not she. See, I'm slipping. They are a Zaman, so they are people who shave their heads and faces completely and present as kind of ace and gender neutral. And we didn't have a name for this person yet, but in honor of Jesse and Marie, I think we'll name the person Jesmar. So Jesmar says they will make a deal with Zell. Zil can continue on with Jesmar as far as the next stop, but Zil has to do two things: clean up the mess that she's made in the cart
Right.
and get Jesmar another lunch.
Hmm.
And so now, part of the thing that we need to remember about this world is you can't be out in the dark. It is dangerous. There are these monsters that roam and they're not everywhere. It's not a zombie horde, but at any
Hmm.
moment in the dark, one of these things could get you. And so Zill can't go, forget it, I'm going to walk home. It's now
Right.
midday. If she tried to walk home, she wouldn't make it in time. So she's got the afternoon now to provide Jesmar with lunch and kind of keep up with the cart, but so that is where we find ourselves is she's now got these dual obligations. So what
Right.
happens next?
Well, question I would have is, I mean, are they between towns, or where is she going to pick up any sort of lunch? Unless
Yes, they
she,
are totally they're in the plains. And
okay,
the plains of Droofst are these this continent is kind of a bowl. And so
right.
there's these very wide plains between Zill's town was kind of on the periphery, hence conscripting, the recruiting of her father.
Hmm.
You're going to go
Right.
fight the military. And so and now she's headed in toward the interior in this wide open plains.
Okay.
So what's she
How
gonna do?
fertile are these plains? Are we looking at farms nearby, or are we looking at a desert?
Lots of farmland, very, very
Ah,
fertile ground. And so that's one of the reasons the people, of the empire have been able to have this empire is they can produce lots of food because they've got this really
okay.
fertile soil.
All right. Well, she needs to look for, I mean, cleaning up's easy. I'm assuming she'd be able to do that pretty quick. But in terms of finding food before the next town, she's gonna have to sneak away to the nearby farm and sort of start looking around the farmhouse there. Chicken coops if they have them. That would be sort of the first thing to deal with. There'd be, I mean, you could have plenty sort of either angsty or humorous type thing where she's like trying to stay hidden while the chickens are going, "Rah, rah, rah, rah," these are particularly intelligent chickens. They're like pointing with their wings.
Yes. So she's
And
got to steal some eggs. I
so
like
steal
this.
some eggs. Uh, and you know, just gotta like find a way to boil the eggs, I guess. And if there's like if any farm workers around, she's gonna have to take their lunch at some point or something like
Oh,
that.
that's a yes. She could take another person's lunch. So yes, certainly an option, and
Yeah,
potentially gets us some other characters too, which is fun.
yeah.
So yeah, so she could get farm workers, and what would be the more interesting? Well, I don't know
I
if we want to
think,
go
I
too
mean,
interesting. Who would she take from?
stealing again. I mean, I think that's just a repeat. She has to think of something a bit different in terms of like she can't just snatch somebody's lunch. Um, Taking eggs is like one thing, but possibly she might find somebody nearby who, for some reason, looks sympathetic and just she takes a leap of faith and says, "Hey, look, uh, hi, yeah, here's the deal. I need to get somebody some food. I don't have any. I'm assuming they don't have any currency on them.
Right,
Yeah, and and just, what can we do? And I mean, that's a big leap of faith to take, but
right,
still, the fact that she would take that chance um, would be, I think, significant and would build up. I mean, I think the person that she would talk to would be at least a little bit impressed by that and would try to come up with something that would be a fair exchange. Um, sure what, but I mean, it could be just, even just a little help with the farm work. But I'm thinking something a bit more interesting.
I'm
I
wondering,
mean,
this would kind of be funny, is maybe
yeah,
the reader is aware of something that that Zill is not. And so
right.
Zill's clever ploy is I will trade you these eggs that I have for the lunch that you brought out here to do work. And we know
Yeah,
the person she's trading them to is the farmer.
yeah,
She is trading, and yet the person is willing to take pity on her and say, okay, you drive a hard bargain. How many eggs? Okay, fine. If you give me three of the four eggs, I will give you this, bread and piece of cheese I brought out for my lunch. And we know,
yeah.
yeah, they're
I do
just
like.
trading for their own eggs.
I know. I do like it when a character shows themselves to be, you know, a lot more savvy than people were initially taken to be.
Yes.
And and at the same time they like, okay, well, we can work, we can work with that.
Right, right.
Just, people surprise you. I like it when people surprise you with kindness.
Yeah. Well, and it's a
Yeah.
good because we're so early in the story, establishing that the people of this, universe are not evil and awful. I think it's,
Yeah.
this is a world of good, kind, honest folk struggling because we're going to have lots of awful later.
Yeah.
In any kind of story, we're going to, chase our characters up a tree and throw rocks at them, as the
Yeah.
old saying goes. And
Yeah.
so, starting off with some good decency. So she's now got this lunch that she thinks she cleverly traded from the farm worker. She returns to Jesmar with this lunch, and now we kind of get an opportunity to get to know a little bit more about Jesmar. Now, the only thing that we know from last week is Jesmar's reaction to finding this child was not, I'm going to throw this kid out of my
Right.
cart. But at the
Right.
same time, it wasn't immediately, oh, it was not immediately kind. She went into this kind of sarcastic diatribe where she
Mhm.
pretended not to be able to see Zill, but then went, what kind of stupid person would be hiding in a car? Of course, I can't see whoever's hiding in my cart, but what
Yeah.
kind of stupid person would hide with one foot clearly sticking out from the basket, and
Yeah.
made fun of her. And so
Yeah.
now that Zill has come back, what is their interaction like?
Well, I mean, the it sounds like the person in the cart. I mean, they're not. I mean, they're not a monster, but at the same time, they sort of feel it's like I can't help everybody that shows up on this cart. Okay, I got, yeah, I got. I'm taking on their accent.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit New York.
I
And
mean,
I got my own problems here.
yeah,
Yeah,
which is totally
and
legitimate and reasonable, and I don't think makes the character unbelievable. Like that is,
right.
the way most people would go. I've got my own stuff that I need to take care of.
So, uh, I had an initial thought of like, if she comes back with the actual lunch, and it's like, how did she do this? It's like, oh, okay, so you have some talent. Maybe maybe we can be a partner about that. I mean,
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a good
we could
idea.
part.
Like maybe some recognition. This kid, if I get this kid to the next town, could actually work with me and be helpful in
Yeah.
some way.
I mean, you might think as a result of that she got this, that she has more talent than she actually has. I mean, which I mean, she'll develop talent going down the line, but right now he's like, oh, okay. Uh, Part of me thinks like, I mean, I don't think part, I'd be debating with myself whether he thinks he could like work with her as a thief
Mm.
type of thing, but I'm not sure if that fits this world or
Oh
this
yeah. No, I mean
particular
that could be
character.
interesting. We don't know
Yeah,
much about Jesmar.
yeah,
Maybe all we know so far is what Jesmar's got in the cart and the fact that they were not willing to kick this kid out and say, sorry, you may
yeah,
die on the way home, but
yeah,
too bad. I don't, so they're not entirely unsympathetic, but maybe there is kind of a honor among thieves thing going on where they're going
yeah.
off to the next town and going, I could employ this kid as a little thief,
Little thief
to,
or somebody who can sidle their way in and get information because
yeah.
there is definitely that advantage of people, nobody assumes, the small quiet types are the ones that surprise you. I remember reading in your outline that there's like uh, uh, um, uh, a group, they had a bunch of different races in there,
Yeah.
varying styles of humanity, one of which doesn't speak, I think you said.
Yes, well, or at least their languages are not
Yeah.
intelligible to one another easily, certainly. So yeah, yeah, the
It's
we
like
could play with
they must
that.
be hiding something really good.
Oh, well, and that could be one of the groups that we
Yeah.
come into contact with is maybe this trader, this merchant trades with this other group on the regular. Like
Yeah.
we're now going to go to this place where we trade with the deep folk and we can
Yeah.
kind of explore who are this other group of people. And maybe this person's thinking, Zill could be really helpful in connecting with this other group of people, these
Yeah.
other sentient people that I can't communicate with well.
I agree. I think that's something to explore.
Oh, I like that a lot. Maybe that's
Yeah.
where they're off to. Okay, so I'm thinking for kind of a cliffhangery ending. This person accepts Zill back, and they have their own intentions for what they're going to employ Zill to do.
Right.
And where do we leave the reader at the end of kind of this chapter?
Well, I think what comes to my mind is that they reach the next town, but there's something wrong with the next town. I think there might be like some sort of big disturbance happening there. Um, like a protest or a riot that's in progress and is getting a bit out of hand, or the police are like getting a bit out of hand type of thing. And and they suddenly find themselves in the middle of it. That would be, I think, a good cliffhanger to leave off on.
And we don't know why. I like this a
Exactly.
lot. So they show up, there is some kind of political unrest in the next village, and we don't know why, and we'll leave it there. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay.
Perfect.
That's excellent. Okay, so we're going to go to our commercial break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask you
Mhm.
what you've been daydreaming about lately.
Okay.
Hey, readers and reviewers. I want to put out an all call for guests who are fighting back against fascism. If you know an author or artist of any kind who is using their art or their platform to push back, especially if they are doing so in an interesting way that deserves more attention and support, share this show with them and encourage them to email NotAPipePublishing at NotAPipePublishing@gmail.com, and we'll get them scheduled. And if you're looking for inspiring or practical ways you can push back, be sure to subscribe to the show so you catch all the great guests folks are going to recommend. See you here each week. This week's episode of Writers Not Writing is brought to you by Jason Brick's The Bushido Chronicles. This duology of YA contemporary fantasy novels begins with Wrestling Demons. Varsity wrestler Connor Morgan and his mother moved to Portland, Oregon to get away from his drug-addicted father, but they didn't move away from trouble. At his new high school, 3 heavyweight wrestlers chase him through the halls. He runs away in his underwear past the girl he likes into the January cold. Then something weird happens. The next thing Connor knows, he's fighting for his life against supernatural evil with the help of new friends as he learns the power and dangers of his new destiny. The stakes rise as he discovers a powerful enemy bent on destroying more than just his high school. Ultimately, he must embrace his role in an ancient fight if he wants to save the day. And he still has to get good grades and a date for the prom. Douglas Sedevi says, good and evil, witty banter, and of course, good action. Jason Bricks mixes all of this well together in a fast-paced young adult novel. Debbie Dodds, author of Amish Guys Don't Call, says, written in the straightforward style of Gary Paulson with a dash of Terry Pratchett's magic. Heather Ransom, author of the Going Green trilogy, says, a perfect balance of dramatic action, entertaining humor, and honest relationships. In Fighting Upstream, Connor Morgan is back. It's the state wrestling championship, and Connor is nervous. If he does well, he'll get the attention of college scouts. If he gets the attention of college scouts, he'll get a scholarship. If he gets a scholarship, he might just be able to lift his family out of poverty. But first he has to win, which means squaring off against some of the biggest, best, most demon-ridden wrestlers in Oregon, all in between a decades-hopping time travel mission to save his mentor from certain death. It's all in a day's work for a member of the Bushido Warriors, but sometimes a day can last more than 24 hours. Karen Eisenbray, author of Daughter of Magic and the Gospel According to St. Rage, says, "This high-stakes thrill ride through time and space takes the medal for friendship and hope in hard times." Benjamin Gorman, author of Corporate High School and the Convention of Fiends, says, "A triumphant story of the past, the future, and the virtues that endure." Debbie Dodds, author of Amish Guys Don't Call, says, "Laughter, love, and loops, time travel, tournaments, Tunakian trials, history and heroes, warriors, wrestling and weirdness, sensei and sonic screwdrivers, fun, fights, and friendship, Bushido, and bombs. This book has it all. A story that both young adult and not-so-young adult readers will love." Get Wrestling Demons and Fighting Upstream wherever you buy books, or get 25% off the duology in paperback or hardcover from the NotAPipePublishing store at NotAPipePublishing.com.
You deserve a vacation.
How about a trip to a dude ranch on a colony planet?
Or a journey to a universe where wizards call lightning down from the sky and calm rumbling volcanoes?
Or a holiday tour of the major cities of Europe with vampires and werewolves and witches as guides.
Or maybe just a nice hot sudsy bath with a book of poetry that will make you cry and sigh and laugh.
We've got you covered.
A paperback will appear on your doorstep each month to whisk you away, and you'll return refreshed, enlightened, and ready to make the world we share a brighter place for everyone.
Or if you prefer, you can sign up for a quarterly subscription and get 4 YA titles, 4 adult titles, or 4 collections of poetry per year.
Plus, you'll get book club questions from the author before you start the book and an interview with the author afterwards.
So, if you are in a book group or want to start one, this is everything you need in a kit. Will we occasionally throw in some extra surprises just to say thank you to our members? Of course.
You can also give someone their very own membership with all of the rights and privileges pertaining thereto.
So, find a reward level that's right for you.
And share this with your friends.
Join the Indulge Your Shelf book club today. Your bookshelves deserve a little pampering. Welcome back, everyone. So I am here with James Bow. And James, when you've been daydreaming, what have you been daydreaming about lately?
Well, I mean, I'm a writer, so I tend to daydream about things to happen in the stories. I also tend to, there's been a bit of fan fiction that I'm daydreaming about. I mean, you haven't seen Lower Decks yet, but there is 2 characters. A lot of the story is centered around Tendi, who is this Orion, and Orions are, stereotyped as pirates and mafia types. She's a scientist. She's like an exuberant scientist, really exuberant scientist, and is trying to fight against this stereotype, this Orion stereotype, and she's counterpointed by a character named Rutherford, who's an engineer, part cyborg, and they become science besties type of thing, and and as a result, they have been shipped so heavily in the series.
Yeah.
Fan fiction. But one of the things that makes it interesting is the series plays along, it covers that as well. But their relationship, while they have a monogamous, exclusive relationship, it's entirely platonic. So, I write fan fiction too. I like, to explore these sorts of things. I mean, I've been thinking it's like, be nice to write a fan fiction story where it's like, okay, we need to have a talk about this relationship, this exclusive, monogamous, but platonic relationship. It's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. That would be, I mean, it would be interesting to write it with somebody who is, maybe in the ace community, who could say this might be a way that would, but it doesn't sound like it's not romantic asexuality. Right. It's platonic. That's interesting.
Yeah. So that's some of the things I've been daydreaming about. I'm working on the companion story to the Sunrunners called the Cloud Riders, which is sort of an interplanetary country mouse, city mouse, set on Venus and Mars. You know, a Martian comes to Venus after the fall of Earth, barely makes it, but is found by the main character, Venusian. They were pen pals, and he was escaping sort of problems. He was escaping sort of political troubles on Mars, but the political troubles managed to find him on Venus, so he has to go back, and she goes with him.
Mm.
So so I'm still in the working on putting a proper draft together. So I've been thinking about that a lot.
Well, and I don't know if your process, if this would be helpful or hurtful, because it's, sometimes if you read something that is too much like what you're going to write, it actually can get in your way. But
Yeah.
that sounds like, if you have read the novel The Possessed by Ursula K. Le Guin.
Oh yeah, I've definitely seen that.
So you've got the two political systems and the traveling back and forth, and the one of the things I love about that series or that book for folks who've not read it is it is very gimlet-eyed and savvy about the fact that there is no utopia, that
Right.
no one system is perfect, and so it presents this kind of hyper-capitalist society and all the advancements that that makes possible, and yet all of the injustice that
Yeah.
that kind of stratified society, and then this other that is this anarchic society, where people choose to live together in kind of harmony, and yet you realize there are downsides to that as well. And so, and then, will the people accept somebody who is moving back and forth between worlds, which I think
Oh
is
yeah.
exactly what you're dealing with.
I had fun with the. I also had fun with the politics and economics of it. Venus is a collaborative, cooperative society, and Mars is tech bros and mafia families.
Mm.
So, but they do some trading. Venus has farming platforms. Their society is Uber Zeppelins at 50 kilometers above the surface, and so Venus makes paper. They're
Mm.
proud of it, and there's this moment where they're passing around the newsletter, an actual sheet of paper, and the Martians like looking at this is like, you do realize this is basically currency on Mars. It's like, oh yeah, yeah, there used to be paper currency on Earth, and they call it like bills or something. No, 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 actual paper.
Yeah.
It's impossible to counterfeit. A quarter page is 10 credits, and a ream will get you a small industrial robot.
Yeah, yeah.
Type of
I
thing.
mean, I'm working in this fantasy world,
Yeah,
but similarly, paper is incredibly labor intensive, and so
yeah,
paper historically has been really valuable, throughout human history. And we live in an age where paper is mass produced and easily available, but that is not universal.
yep. Oh yeah, for sure. So yeah, so in terms of daydreaming, that's what I've been daydreaming on the job type of thing because it's my job.
Well, and I wonder to what extent you and I, as authors, think about the value of paper in this kind of metaphorical way too.
Yeah.
Like it's the pro. I mean, we could also think about the value of concrete throughout the history of humanity, which is, incredibly important. I've actually read that we are running low on certain ingredients in concrete, and it may actually become a problem. But
Mm,
as authors, we don't go to concrete first; we go to paper.
yeah.
It's our medium. Um,
Yeah.
so what is something coming up in your career? You've got a book that's going to be re-released, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been doing a lot of promotions of the Sunrunners and Tales from the Silence. They're both coming out through Shadow Paw Press, which is this great boutique um, publisher out of Saskatchewan that's punching way above their weight. And they've taken on The Night Girl. The Night Girl was published as a urban fantasy set in Toronto that was published in late 2019. We met at the Portland Comic Con when it debuted.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're taking it on and re-releasing it with a new cover, and they have access to the literary press group distributors in Canada, so it'll be a lot easier to pick up at independent bookstores. Just place your order and it'll be there and however long it takes. You don't need to go through the big
Yes.
AZ.
Support independent bookstores. Yes.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. That's exciting. So when do you know when that drops?
It's dropping in August the 12th.
Oh, folks don't often know. It surprises people how long it takes for a book to, to come out. It's a long
Yeah,
project. So
yeah,
August, but I guess a re-release is faster. But
it
still,
is.
that's wonderful. August.
Yeah, they're just I mean, he has to also arrange the schedule for other books that
Hmm.
he's also releasing,
Oh yeah.
and that's near the science fiction convention When Words Collide in Calgary. So maybe I'll be able to make it out there and help with
Yeah,
the
make an event of it. Oh, that's very cool. So
yeah.
where can folks find you online?
Well, my website, which was an old blog, which was extensively used back when blogs were cool. And
Yeah.
coming back to it in order to get some independence from social media. My website is bowjamesbow, BOWJAMESBOW.ca. And that's got it's got thousands of posts, but fiction and politics and stuff. You can search, but you can also, there's like easy links to my most recent books. I'm also releasing, this week will be the last chapter, a chapter by chapter, a YA urban fantasy set in rural Saskatchewan called The Dream King's Daughter. It's a book I wrote almost 20 years ago that was one of the ones that got away.
Yeah.
So I brushed it up, took out some problematic things that I hadn't realized were problematic at the time,
Which is part of the process, right?
which
We
is part of the
grow and learn, and
process.
we're different people now than we were then. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
that's important to recognize. That's very
yeah,
cool.
yeah, and had a lot of and I'm releasing it. The story is about basically this young woman who um, has the ability to see what people are dreaming by looking them in the eye, whether she wants to or not.
Mm.
And she realizes that she's been the past 3 years, thinks that she has been a waitress at this Hamlet in a Hamlet diner in rural Saskatchewan. Um, she's had her memories wiped by her mother,
Mm.
and she's been stashed here. And and then suddenly these forces come to try and get her, and then sort of her memories come back, and she's like, "What the heck?" And she has to hightail it to Saskatoon in order to find another safe place and try to figure out who am I and why are people after me, that sort of thing. And it's probably got something to do with the fact that I can see what people are dreaming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds really fun. What's that one called?
It's called The Dream King's Daughter.
The Dream King's Daughter. And so
Yeah.
that will come out as it's a full novel or a short story?
It's a full novel. It's about 50,000 words, so it's a
Oh,
short
okay.
novel.
Yeah.
And it's definitely YA. The Night Girl is not YA, even though I don't set out to write YA. I write a lot of YA, but I ended up finding, I mean, I write right from the same place. Dream King's Daughter and The Night Girl were written at roughly the same time. But then I found when I tried to sell The Night Girl as YA, it wouldn't quite take. And I've also found that teenage audiences weren't really interested in certain aspects of the story with the office politics and stuff and the office
Yes.
jokes.
I
But 20 somethings loved it.
Right, right. I one of my first novel. I was a high school teacher at the time, and my students would say, oh, should we get your novel? And I would have to kind of very carefully explain because the word adult can mean different things.
Yeah.
And I would have to say it's an adult novel, and they would get really excited. Ooh, it's an adult, and no, 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 it's about things like divorce and retirement. These are not questions that teenagers are particularly enthralled with. When should I retire?
Right.
So, I
Pretty
mean,
much,
in
yeah.
my case, it was Yahweh deciding whether or not to retire from being God. That I
Yeah.
thought was pretty funny. But the
Yeah.
question of retirement is not something teenagers can identify with particularly. So,
Agreed, yeah.
yes, yeah, it's not. In the industry, we so often just go, well, what is the age of the protagonist? Therefore, it's YA or it's not. But you're right. It's really about what would a young reader sink their teeth into?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, so I'm on bojamesbo.ca. That's my site. I'm on BlueSky again as bojamesbo.ca. So, and I've really been appreciating how that community has grown.
Yeah.
And there's been a strong writer community that's sort of that has come over and is being fostered there. So that's and it's definitely, I think, a lot more positive right now than say the big X or Meta. So I'm spending a lot of time there. I am still on Facebook. We'll see how long that goes,
Right.
but look for me as James Bow, and that's where I'm at.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Okay, well, and we will of course have links to those in the show notes, so folks who are listening to this or watching this on YouTube right now can scroll down and you'll see all those links as well.
For sure.
So before we get to our send off, I need to thank the artist Max Oakland who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song, "I Prefer the Dusk." Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3Ds. And thanks to the author Stephen E. Scribner, often author of the Tond Fantasy series, who makes music under the name S. Eric Scribner, for his song "A Poem" that we used during the ad break. If you make music and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's or Stephen's songs, so email me about that. Thanks to Doug, the producer, for making this show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. And I cannot forget to mention, Writers Not Writing is a production of NotAPipePublishing. So please go to NotAPipePublishing.com, check out the amazing books written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much. And if you like this show, rate it and review it wherever you found it. Please check out James Bow's newest. Actually, where should folks start in your works in terms of what's dropping?
Well, I would go with the Sunrunners right now. It's out, it's strong, and then you can move on to Tales from the Silence. Also available is Icarus Down from 2016. That won the Pre-Award Award for Best Canadian Science Fiction, YA Science Fiction.
That's very cool.
That put me on a press release with Robert Sawyer and Margaret Atwood. So, I mean, that's a
Yeah,
bucket
not
list.
shabby, not bad. Oh, that's great. Well, when you do check those out, folks, please click that 5th star, give them a short review. It makes a big difference. So be sure to rate and review, tell a friend, and the same for the show, of course. Click on that little thumbs up there. We would appreciate it, and give us a review. Okay, so before we lose you, we want to give you some pieces of advice going into your week. And I've been saying to folks, please remember all writing is political, all speaking is political, and choosing not to write or speak is also a political statement because silence maintains the status quo. So use your voice to make the world a better place. And James, how about you? What's your advice for everybody going into their week?
Well, I would go back to the quote that I said. It's like, find those people and things that are not of the inferno and help them endure, give them space.
Here's a tiny bit of our bonus segment just for supporters of the Patreon.
But the training that I received as an urban planner stayed with me, and I feel like I can read cities. I can sort of see how old they are basically based on their architecture, how close the buildings are to the streets, how walkable they are. And so, in some ways, cities can be read like a book when it comes to this. And I find that interesting. And, and I wish people would sort of pay more attention to that, because cities, it's world building, but with real buildings. And these do have a tremendous effect on your health and on your way of life. I mean, I visited Portland. If I take